Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the No Coal Town Hall, sponsored by the Lethbridge West NDP and Shannon Phillips, your NDP voice in Southern Alberta. My name is Scott McGregor, and I'll be your MC for tonight. So we're going to start things off with some very special guests as an extra bit of entertainment for all the Albertans who are joining us tonight. Now, the No Coal movement has been helped along by some very high-profile musicians in the past week, and we are grateful for that. Our good friends Cor Blund, Paul Brandt, Katie Lang, and Jan Arden have all spoken out against this, and we are so grateful you're here. Let's welcome Shannon Phillips.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Phillips. I'm the NDP MLA here in Lethbridge. And, we thought we would start tonight out with, if we're going to mine anything around here, let's mine the amazing breadth of musicians and artists in Southern Alberta. So I want to bring attention to three artists tonight, starting with Megan Brown and James Swinney, who performs as Corduroy Brown. And then after them, Dave McCann of Dave McCann and the Firehearts is going to come and play us a couple tunes as well. We're going to put the links to their music in the comments so that you can follow up, and when it's safe to do so, again, go see them live all over Alberta. Hopefully we will be doing that soon. But even before then, find ways to support your local artists and your local music venues. Now, I think it's pretty clear that Southern Alberta musicians and artists of all kinds are speaking out against strip mining in our mountains, because most of them live downstream from these proposed coal mines, and they love the mountains and nature, but they also love being able to turn on the taps and having clean drinking water. And that's why so many people are worried about these projects and some of the backroom deals we're hearing about with the UCP making to steamroll ahead with these coal strip mines and giving away our water to do so. We'll get into all that, but first, I think as folks arrive, it's more fun to start this off with some wonderful Southern Alberta music. Please take it away, Megan and James.
All right, well, I'm so excited to be here tonight. We're going to start off with the song that I wrote called Steal Away a few years ago. And I'm Alberta born and raised. My grandpa lives out near Claresholm, so we spent a lot of time in the mountains, around Lakes Creek. And so I'm just really happy to play this song, which is all about the fairies. In the belly of a bird, rising up by such a sun, you're waiting on no one. Ooh, 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 ooh. Hey, waiting on no one. I could just stay beneath these weeping trees, but she's singing high above, bleeding in the sun, that golden sea glistens in the breeze, and those roots run wide and they run deep, but that river keeps on rolling. It ain't time to stop living. Oh, regret. And you turn my boat to ash. Fly me over that to go. I ain't Till my love, it'll be alright. I'm running around chasing butterflies for the dying light, that golden sea. Listen in the breeze and goes through. Run wide and run deep, and that river keeps on flowing. It ain't time to sleep. Oh, ooh, 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 ooh. It ain't time to sleep. All right, we're gonna do a Bob Dylan tune next. Get Mr. Corduroy Brown singing here as well. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe. Even you don't know by now. And it ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe. It'll never do somehow. When the circles at the break of dawn, look out your window and I'm gone. You're the reason I've been traveling on. So don't think twice, it's alright. And it ain't no use in turning on your light, babe. The light I never know. Ain't no use in turning on your light, babe. I'm on the dark side of the road. But I wish that there was something you would do or say. Try and make me change my mind and stay. We never did too much talking anyways. Don't think twice, it's alright. And there ain't no use in calling out my name, yeah, like you never done before. And there ain't no use in calling out my name, yeah. I'm on the dark side. I'm thinking and wondering, walking down the road. I once loved a woman, a child I told. Gave her my heart, but she wanted my soul. So don't think twice, it's alright. So I'll know that babe, where I'm bound I can't tell. Goodbye is too good a word, babe. So I'll just say fare thee well. I ain't saying you treated me unkind. Could have done better, but I don't mind. Just kind of wasted my precious time. So don't think twice, it's alright.
So this is a song that I wrote as well, called Sisyphus. So kind of about that feeling of sometimes you feel like you're just like Sisyphus pushing that rock up the hill and never getting anywhere, and life keeps throwing things at you. But slowly, day by day, things get a little bit better, or worse, and then better again. You never know. So this is Sisyphus. Sisyphus, where you been? Let me hear on the hill alone. That rolling stone don't grow no moss, I'll grow more old, chasing down that heart of gold to her soul. I don't know. Morning sun, day and noon, rolling stone, do what it do. It holds me in the throes. I'm wondering how, I wonder why. It gets harder every time I try. Take the climb. In my head, in my head, in my head. But in the darkness of the night, will I know me? When no is left to fight, you know, you say. Disappear, how you do. Don't think I'm as strong as you. Keep on talking, keeping hold. Still hesitate, laughing some chill. So I keep on walking. I hold my head high, but every road that you're on, we get you so far. Every mountain you see has its highest peak. Tell me, what do you do when you stand at the brink? But in the darkness of the night, would I know pain? When no is left to fight on, you they may come, I lay down, let that stone rush me down, but I keep on talking, keeping on, 'cause every cell has a day, laughing some children, so I keep on walking, hold my head high, every road that you're on, get you so far, every mountain you see has its highest peak. Tell me, what do you do when you stand at the brink? Well, thank you very much. That's all for me.
Thank you so much, Megan. So, folks, Megan Brown is a multi-instrumentalist from Lethbridge, and she's toured as a violinist and a vocalist with numerous bands over the past decade. And most recently, she performs under the stage name Makisma and released her debut album in the spring of 2020. And so she was joined by singer-songwriter James Swinney, who also performs as Corduroy Brown. And I really want to thank them for giving us a bit of their time and their talent this evening. So now I'll just turn it over to Scott McGregor.
Great stuff, guys. Yeah, don't forget the links for these musicians will be shared in the YouTube chat. So you can check them out, do what you can to support them. And don't forget, this town hall is organized by Lethbridge West NDP. You can support them by donating $5 a month and becoming a member. All you have to do is go to www.shannonphillips.ca. Okay, on to the next one. I'm really excited for this next artist. After 2 decades, Dave McCann has locked himself firmly into the hearts and minds of the Western Canadian music scene as one of the best untold singer-songwriters working in contemporary roots music. And his newest effort, Westbound Till Light, is no exception. Friends, let's welcome Dave McCann.
Well, it is an absolute pleasure to be here, folks. I can't thank all of you for being here and for taking the time out of your day to be here and to consider what's happening here in our province. And Shannon and everyone else here that is really putting in time and effort into fighting some people that just really aren't listening to what a lot of the people here in Alberta are concerned about. And I applaud you all for taking your time and writing letters and being a part of this, because this is really an amazing thing, and you're doing a good job. Keep it up. Keep up the pressure. This is a song. This is actually a coal mining song from the Crow's Nest Pass region. Years ago, they asked me to put out a song for a celebration of the Frank Slide, and I didn't get it done in time, so I just sort of had it. It took me about 3 years to finish the song, and I never made it on the CD, so I had it banging around for a while, and I decided to enter it into a songwriting contest for a bank in Calgary. And needless to say, I guess coal mining songs with a communist bent to them didn't really even fare in the contest. But you know, I had done some research into the Crow's Nest Pass. It was the first place in Canada to ever have a communist mayor, so I kind of thought it was an interesting place. And I spent a little bit of time out there because my mother-in-law has a place out there in Bellevue. So this is called "You Can't Cheat the Mountain." Thousand cracks, thunder boys, and 100 million tons come a screaming down old Turtle Mountain, just burying everyone. And the sky bled red that morning, red with prayers and bones. The stories born of the hills down there, the songs of the buried one. You can't cheat the mountain, time ain't bought, you know it's borrowed. 70 tongues took wing that night, just stolen from there to Mars. Their blood long washed in the old man river from the town of Frank on down. The wind here carries voices from the ones who built this town. The blood still runs in broken seas, chained here in this world. We're buried in a Christian tomb of Crow's Nest stone never cut. You can't cheat the mountain, time ain't bought, you know it's borrowed. 70 tongues took wing that night, just stolen So when it comes to promised paydays, you know the black lungs always said, well, I'd rather walk in poverty than to be sleeping with the dead. Yeah, I'd rather walk in poverty than to be sleeping with the dead. And walk this world a millionaire and make the devil's bed. You can't cheat the mountain. Time ain't bought, you know it's borrowed. 70 tongues to wing that night just stolen from there tomorrow. Again, an absolute pleasure to be here, folks. I grew up in Peterborough, Ontario, and I moved out to Calgary about 20 years ago or so, and moved down to Lethbridge here about 10 years and raised some kids. And I've even during this pandemic, we've been spending a lot of time out on the Old Man River, and it's an amazing place, and it's an amazing river to sort of call your hometown river. So being a downstream person from these sort of developments that are going to be happening out there makes me a little worried. Makes me a little worried for my kids. We spend a lot of time in that river this summer, just sort of getting out of the heat. And it's a pleasure to be here in this Blackfoot country and get a chance to spend this time around that river where it's had so many incredible caretakers through the years, generations of them. So it's called Standing in the River. You can find yourself waiting for the one who won't show. It's all smoke, mirrors, gasoline on the road nobody should know. Well, it's a giant dog waiting on the prairie, waiting out there alone. Waiting on paper and pesos, paper and pesos, lost in the phone. And I should be standing in the river, my friend. We should be standing in the river goes down, yeah, the river don't end. And I've been so still and stone fleet, the gift horse always seem to complain. Mud's up and gone some like the road, washed out in the rain. And there's a dry dog waiting on the prairie, waiting out there alone. Waiting on paper and pesos, lost in the fold. And I should be standing in the river, my friend. We should be standing in the river goes down, yeah, the river don't end. And I should be standing in the river, my friend. We should be standing in the river goes goes down, yeah, the river don't. The river goes down, yeah, the river don't. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening, folks. I don't know that I got enough time for another song, but I know that there's an incredible lineup of incredible speakers, incredible informed people that are going to give you some information, and you get to make your choices on what you're going to do with that. And I hope you make some good ones that matter to you. So thank you, Shannon. Thank you for putting this together, and thank you for keeping us informed and fighting for this. It's important. Appreciate it. Take care. We'll see you again.
Yay! That was awesome, Dave. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I had no
guys.
idea you were from Peterborough. I like you way better now. I mean, I liked you before, but way more now.
Well, in all fairness, I've probably been in Alberta longer than I was in Peterborough. So, I mean, it all evens out, I guess.
Fantastic. Well, that was so great.
I'm glad that Dave lives around the corner from my place, and I get to see him all the time. Our kids are around the same age, and Dave's been just a wonderful addition to our Southern Alberta roots music scene down here in Lethbridge. I'm so glad that your parents-in-law live close, and you're not leaving anytime soon because of this.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Folks, we just heard from Megan Brown and James Swinney, and then we heard from Dave McCann. We had a bit of music to start out this evening, and now we're going to start with the program starting at 7 o'clock here. We've got our MC for the evening, Scott McGregor. I'm going to turn things over to Scott. He's going to try to keep us on time, keep me organized. Scott's going to use his superhuman organizational powers here to keep us all moving ahead. We'll hear from some speakers, and then we'll have a Q&A, and hopefully we'll get to as many of your questions as possible. Scott, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Shannon. And again, thank you to our two musicians, Dave and Megan. And Shannon, I forget the name of the guy who performed with Megan. What was his name? Do you remember?
James Swinney.
James, yes. And just so you know, everyone who performed tonight, you can get information on them through the links in the YouTube chat. And again, please support independent musicians during this time that we're in. So welcome everyone to the No Coal Town Hall. It is sponsored by Lethbridge West NDP, Shannon Phillips, your NDP voice in Southern Alberta. And as Shannon mentioned, my name is Scott McGregor, and I'll be your MC for tonight. We are joining you from Blackfoot territory, and I will try and keep things on time and on point. We have people from all over, hundreds of people attending us, and some very distinguished panelists tonight. So once again, let's hear from Lethbridge West NDP, Shannon Phillips.
Well, thank you, Scott. And just so that people know what is coming up this evening, we're going to hear from the mayor of Lethbridge, Chris Spearman. We're going to get an overview of what's happening in terms of the various coal projects from writer Kevin Van Tighem. We're going to hear from a local perspective from the reeve of the municipal district of Ranchlands, which is in the foothills, from Cam Gardner. And we're going to hear from two women from the Kainai Nation, Deandra Brewsted and Latasha Halfrope, have joined us. In addition, we have a number of experts on the line that might be able to answer your specific questions if they're about water policy or legal issues. And we have a special guest, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But the first thing that we need to do here is recognize that we are holding, at least broadcasting, this town hall from Blackfoot territory. And our gathering here today recognizes that the city of Lethbridge is home to the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains. We pay respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. We are also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, and the Lethbridge Métis Association. I'd also like to recognize that folks have signed up here from all over Alberta, and that means that you are coming to us from territory covered by Treaties 6, 7, and 8. And many of us are expressing our concerns about the headwaters of the Old Man River, which is traditional territory for Blackfoot people and mountain nations as well, including the Stoney Nakoda Sioux nations, and further north, the nations that are adherents to Treaty 6. And there is also one other nation that is affected by this, the Assanawich-Winawak Nation of Grand Cache. Métis Nation of Alberta members also share this territory.
Great, Shannon. Thank you very much. Just a few housekeeping items to start. So this town hall grew so large that we've had to broadcast on YouTube. Now, we've gathered hundreds of questions from folks in advance, but there is also an ability for you to ask questions live, and we will try and get to those questions as we see them. As always, please keep it civil. That's all we ask. We will try to get as many as we can, and we will try and follow up with the most frequently asked questions after the town hall. So we do have a number of special guests tonight, including our host, Shannon Phillips, and Martin Schmidt, the MLA for Edmonton Gold Bar, and the NDP environment critic in the Ledge. So I understand we're also being joined by Heather McPherson, a federal member of parliament for Edmonton Strathcona. So I would like to remind you of a few things. First off, make sure you sign the petition, www.shannonphillips.ca/coal. You'll also want to like and share Shannon and Rachel Notley's Facebook pages. Be sure and follow Martin Schmidt, our NDP environment critic. Follow Alberta's Future. Alberta NDP, proposes for a strong, diversified economy and a real solution for our jobs. And just a reminder, this is being hosted by Lethbridge West NDP, and you can support them by donating $5 a month. All you have to do is go to www.shannonphillips.ca. Okay, back to you, Shannon.
So for those of you just joining us, Scott McGregor is a former radio personality here in Lethbridge with 98.1. He's our MC tonight. He's off working in the private sector now, but he still has a radio voice. So he's going to keep us on time and be our MC tonight. Like I said, we have guests from all across the province. We have 2 speakers from the Kainai Nation to lead us off. Then we have a surprise special guest. So like I said, we have a number of other speakers this evening, and then we will have a question and answer period. People really want to be heard. And what we're learning in Alberta is that people are the driving force behind keeping the UCP government honest. And it's people like you that are showing the rest of the country how you stand up to a government and talk about what you actually care about and what you love, which is, of course, the sustainability of our communities, nature, conservation, and the things that we all hold dear in our mountains and foothills as Albertans. So first, folks, I want us to hear tonight our Deandra Bruised-Head, a recently elected Blood Tribe councillor. Deandra is a member of the Kainai Nation. She's a new mom, and she's a person who has held several very important roles with the Kainai Nation, including as climate change coordinator and other roles with Blood Tribe land management. I'm also honored to count her as a friend, at least to text her to see how she's doing. She's just a fantastic leader in the Kainai Nation, and I'm very pleased that she's now a councillor at Blood Tribe, and she's agreed to join us here tonight. We also have Latasha Calfrope, who's a member of the Kainai Nation, and she is the driving force behind the Niitsitapi Water Protectors. And if you haven't checked them out on Facebook, I really am encouraging you to do so. They're a grassroots initiative against coal strip mines, and you can get a lot of information and Indigenous perspective and ways that you can take action if you find Niitsitapi Water Protectors on Facebook, and we'll post that link. So without further ado, Deandra and Latasha are going to now share their time with us with some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Shannon. Okay, Nikshiskoa, Gitkona Kshimatim Powow. Anom, Ni Dauk Sinun. Ni Stoagoki Dom Salgatsi. Nimkdodo Agano. Nimktotitabi mamioix gi agapugax. I am acknowledging the traditional Blackfoot territory, the place where we all get our sustenance. So good evening, relatives. My name is Deandra Brewstead. I am Ganaki, a woman of the Blood Tribe. I am so humbled tonight to have the opportunity to speak alongside the grassroots organizer Latasha Caffrobe, who has spearheaded the movement Nitsitabi Water Protectors. I'm very humbled and honored to also share the stage with, Rachel, Cam, Kevin, Chris, and the others who will be speaking tonight. I cannot speak from a political platform. I can only speak from the heart. However, an insight I gained during my recent political campaign was that traditionally in Ghana, no one led from grandstanding. If you didn't like the camp you were in, you packed up your family and left. You didn't shout around the camp that you were leaving or that you were dissenting. Those who agreed with you would follow. They would trust that you would lead them to survival. Though the democratic institution imposed on the nations are the Canadian official leadership, Agano is the name for many chiefs, many leaders, of which we are all on this call today. This, my friends, is what this land breathes. I can only echo the sentiments of the risks we face, short-term gain for long-term destruction. The spirit of place is an essence beyond the physical. It is a spiritual connection between the water and the roots, the air and the hooves and the people. And today I know that you feel it calling your spirit. You are too. No short-term gain is enough to break this connection. But how are we supposed to shift this mindset in our current situation without addressing the roots of where these unilateral decisions come from? Blackfoot people and other First Nations have been on this land since time immemorial. The obligation to consult on how these lands are shared had been completely erased in the Western format, to usher in the era of the settler, the rancher, and the farmer. No one questioned this kind of unilateral decision-making until now, until we are all standing with each other and demanding a voice. And I assure you, I am just as surprised to bear witness to this unification today. What was once successful in colonial endeavors to divide and conquer is now eroding to display the flaws and cracks in the system of taking and taking and taking. And this issue will not, or rather it should not, be the only issue that we rally on. The world, the global climate, and the natural environment is telling us that the status quo isn't working. Yet we are still trying to fight and argue within the status quo. Today, we demand that coal takes a halt for us to progress with a certainty of environmental and physical health. Tomorrow, we will fight for equitable voices at the decision-making table. And let's really talk about sustainability, about environmental protection. What's the end use of the material? We have an overseas company buying our Rocky Mountains for metallurgical coal in this instance, which will then be sent overseas for processing. So there's economic gain in the mining and then transportation for Canadians. Overseas, this coal is to be processed for steel. I am not unlike the rest of society. My home contains a number of items that have been made in China. And the expectation is that Albertans and Canadians will buy the steel or the materials the steel is formed into for future progression. Then where will that steel end up eventually? Will the bill of garbage, the space of land the waste takes up, will that cost be on the shoulders of Albertans again? There is no circular advantage to continuing to manufacture human waste without talking about human-made materials right now. These kinds of projects have zero legitimacy for the seventh generations beyond me, beyond us. Those six gates at the beaks, all of our young ones coming after us, deserve to know that we are standing up for them. So thank you, Shannon, for inviting me to your town hall, and thank you to your staff and your team for setting it up. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deandra, and thank you for everybody for giving us a space to share our message. Okay, Nisokwa, Nisto Honestal, Matomokomotsaki, Nin Anista Gitogyapi, Nixistanista Saksi Sanaki. I am a member of the Blood Tribe of Southern Alberta. And really, I come to you today as a concerned mother of my 3 beautiful Blackfoot babies, the ones who will be growing up on this land, the ones who will be hearing the stories that come from this land and sharing that pride of what it means to be Nitsitapi. They are the ones who will pass that on to their children and their children's children after that. Unfortunately, what is happening with these coal mines is that we are at risk of losing those stories that are deeply embedded in these lands. I had the privilege and honor to grow up on the lands of the Blood Reserve and the lands throughout the Blackfoot Confederacy in our traditional territory. I swam in the Old Man River countless times on my uncle's land there on the north side of the Blood Reserve. I got to drink from these waters, and I got to see the beauty to which is our land and our mountains and where we come from. The rescinding of the 1976 coal policy by the UCP government, was a deliberate attack on our Nitsitapi way of life and who we are, what our future generations will hold and what will be left for them. I don't come here to say, I just come here with my heart and laying it all out for you because I am concerned about what is happening. I am trying to speak up and unfortunately, that keeps getting diminished in what is going on in our political landscapes. I want to echo that this is more than just blowing up mountains for coal. Our livelihood and our rights as First Nations people are being diminished through the rescinding of this policy, through the approval of these coal mines. And those rights, such as our rights to livelihood, to practice our way of life, to speak our language, to pass this on to future generations, is constantly being challenged by what's happening here. There's so much going on that there's not enough words to say it. There's not enough words in the English language to share how much this will impact First Nations, how much every time the land is destroyed, how much that tears apart who we are as Nitsitapi. And all we're really asking for is that we be granted that right and that right be respected for us to live our traditional ways, for us to pass that on to our future generations. And so I ask that we all, take that commitment today to honor our treaties, because when our ancestors signed treaty back in 1877 and they sat at Blackfoot Crossing and they sat with those representing the government of Canada and the Crown, that we did enter into that sacred treaty to be stewards of the land together. And so I ask for that to be upheld, because by protecting treaty, we are protecting the land, we are protecting the water, we are protecting all people in our traditional territories. We haven't forgot that sacredness of those treaties. And we ask now for those treaties to be upheld and honored by all Albertans as we endeavor in this fight to protect our lands together. So thank you for allowing me the space to speak today. I'm very honored to share the floor with Deandra and all of the wonderful people on this call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Latasha, and thank you very much, Deandra, as well. I hope you guys are both able to stick around and answer any questions that people might have. Don't forget, you can ask questions live. We have a ton of questions already, but we will be going through the questions as the stream is going. So next up, we have a very special guest, folks. We have Rachel Notley, leader of the NDP and former premier, dropping in on us. Talk about someone who doesn't need an introduction. So please welcome and take it away, Rachel.
Well, hi there. Thank you, Scott. And thank you to everybody who's attending here tonight, this evening. And let me begin by offering up my appreciation to our MLA for Lethbridge West and our NDP critic for finance, Shannon Phillips, and to all her staff who are helping to organize this event tonight. I also, of course, want to join and thank Marlon Schmidt, who's our environment critic, who's been working tirelessly on this matter. And thank you as well, Deandra and Latasha, for your very thoughtful and important remarks here tonight. I know that there are so many Albertans, myself included, who want to see this 1976 coal policy restored. For more than 4 decades, it's provided critical protection for some of Alberta's most treasured areas. And we know that it's very, very sensitive. The coal policy was introduced by Peter Lougheed's government after years of research and public consultation. And in fact, the deliberation over the policy itself spanned 6 years. Albertans have overwhelmingly said that the Eastern Slope should be devoted to watershed protection, recreation, tourism, and just, everything that, and of course that the land itself should be respected for the way it has interacted with original peoples for so many years before anybody else was here. Premier Lougheed even, had a compelling vision based on the input that he received from those public consultations back in the mid-70s. And quite frankly, that vision needs have and ban mining of any in the and I stand with in having considerable concerns about cumulative impact and the revision of the coal population. Jason Kenney rescinded the coal policy without warning, without any form of consultation, in the middle of a devastating pandemic. I believe that the Premier and his Environment Minister deliberately tried, in fact, to exclude Albertans from this decision. And in my view, that's just not leadership. Reliable, transparent, and trustworthy consultation, along with predictable evidence-based decision-making. While it does sound a little boring when I say it that way, the fact is that is actually a profoundly effective tool for sound economic growth. And in most games, also leads to investment uncertainty, and it puts a chill on growth. And stop doing that. Even there seems to be sometimes the only language they ever can speak. The way they have managed this undermines economic growth and investor certainty. It obviously as well goes further in that it demonstrates a profound negligence when it comes to the obligation through the charter.
Rachel, your feed is cutting in and out.
In this case. Mm-hmm.
So your feed is cutting.
Is it?
Yeah. So
okay, I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. I think what we should do is just cut your camera and keep going.
Okay. I shall try that.
Sometimes your feed will catch up, I found, when that happens.
Okay. Here we go. We'll cut my camera and we will go from there. Sorry about that. I hope, Shannon, let me know if it sounds a bit better, okay? I'm mostly done. I won't take too much longer. What I just want to talk about really quickly, though, is, instead of departing from this strategy of engaging in this sort of secrecy and behind the scenes of decision-making that we've seen, they didn't end that. They didn't apologize. Instead, what we saw on Monday was essentially the commencement of chapter 2 of what I would call this little dishonest adventure, where late on Monday afternoon, with no opportunity for questions and no accountability, we got a statement from the Minister of Energy saying that the problem had been fixed. And what they actually did, of course, was cancel 11 coal mine leases. But as people here know, that those leases only count for less than 1% of the land in the area that's already leased out for coal exploration. And without restoration of the policy, massive coal exploitation remains a risk on the eastern slopes, and of course to everybody that relies on them. So once again, this was just another attempt to pull the wool over all of our eyes and say they were listening to Albertans, and they were doing so with a very hollow gesture that really doesn't fix a mistake. What is great, though, is that nobody's been fooled by it. And I just want to offer my largest amount of thanks to the thousands of Albertans, many of whom are here tonight, who stood up and are standing up. It's as if, Jason Nixon and Jason Kenney stepped on a hornet's nest, and that hornet's nest is Southern Albertans who care deeply from all walks of life about the integrity of the environment, the integrity of the eastern slopes. And it's because of what you folks have been doing that the government is listening. And I'm not going to talk much longer because I think I've gone too long. But what I will say is it's because of meetings like tonight and more that will come that will ultimately get us to the point where we have the kind of resolutions here that respect Indigenous people, respect everybody in Southern Alberta, and ultimately preserve the integrity of our eastern slopes. So thank you so much, Shannon, and I'm going to be listening to as much of the conversation as I can for the rest of the night. Take care.
Well, thank you, Rachel. And it's good that we got that tech cleaned up, and probably your internet will have caught up to you. I think that probably, the fiber optic cables in Edmonton are just not fast enough to keep up to how fast your brain works. So I think that's probably what happened there. But we got through it. Thank you, Rachel. That was amazing to hear from you. And we will now go on to our next speaker. Scott, take it away.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you very much, Rachel Notley. So surprising, Jason Kenney doing something secretive, so unlike him. So one of the reasons that I wanted to attend tonight, was to get a good sense of what the issues are. And if you're like me, you know that our water is kind of important, but the rules around it are really complicated. It's probably a bad thing to strip mine mountaintops. Maybe that's not so good for fish and wildlife, but maybe you don't quite know how. So, there's a bunch of different projects at various stages. It's a lot to take in. So to give us an overview on where we're at and where we're going, we've asked Kevin Van Tigham to bring us up to speed. So we'd love to hear from you, Kevin.
Thanks, Scott. I think some of what I've got prepared to present tonight has already been covered a bit, so I might extemporaneous more than I expected to. First of all, I think it's important to make a distinction between the Grassy Mountain project, which is a coal mine proposal just north of Lundbreck in the Crow's Nest Pass area, and the other issue of Alberta's coal development policy. They're linked, but they're separate. And the reason they're separate is because when Grassy Mountain was previously mined, the company Riverbend, I think it's called, that wants to mine it now has been working on this project for a number of years, trying to build public support for it, putting together a project plan, and they submitted it for consideration, I think probably about probably 4 or 5 years ago. And because of the size and the scale of it, and because of the impacts that it's almost certain to cause to water and trout and a bunch of other things, it triggered both a provincial and a federal environmental review. So if you just look at the Grassy Mountain project, it's a project that is following due process. It's the federal and provincial review is just being concluded in terms of the public input and the expert analysis, and we'll be hearing back from the joint panel in June, and they'll make a determination on it. I think probably most people that have looked at it in any kind of depth know that it's not the kind of project this province needs. However, what we can say is that it's a project that is following the correct path in terms of being properly submitted and properly evaluated by an expert review panel, and plenty of opportunity for public consultation. So I'm going to set that one aside. I'm not trying to dismiss it in any way whatsoever, but I'm saying that it's a whole different order of magnitude of bad compared to the rest of the story. The coal development policy came into effect in 1976, and that came after several years of resource analysis and public consultation by the Peter Lougheed government. They did a lot of homework. They commissioned inventories of our natural resources all across the province, laid them over top of each other and said, where would it make most sense to focus on one resource versus focus on another resource to get the best outcomes for the people of Alberta? And then after they thought they had the answers, they came and checked with us. You know, good governance. It was ahead of its time, the coal policy, because it anticipated future water shortage, and it put a priority on keeping our headwaters region free from a kind of mining that uses copious amounts of water, while also damaging groundwater recharge and polluting streams. If there was any doubt about whether they were right to worry about water way back then, it's worth remembering that in 2006, Alberta declared a moratorium on new water licenses in the South Saskatchewan River Basin because all the available water was already spoken for. And river monitoring soon showed that the moratorium might have been too little too late, in fact, because river flows have dropped in the last century by anywhere from 10 to 20%. Those are the natural river flows coming out of our headwaters. And a lot of that goes back to land use, some of it goes to climate change. So one thing that we heard from Jason Nixon and Sonia Savage and Jason Kenney in the land of Jason's up there in Edmonton was that the coal development policy was out of date. It was not. It was not out of date. It was a policy whose time had come. We need that protection now as never before, because our population is much greater than it was in 1976. Our water demand's much higher and our water certainty is much lower. So anyway, what the coal policy did was it mapped out Alberta's coal-bearing lands and it divided them into 4 categories. Category 1 was high mountaintops, protected parks, and other places where coal mining was simply not going to be allowed. For the most part, I think that's still in effect, but who knows? We have only Jason Nixon word on that one, and I'll say no more on that. Category 2 was places so remote or environmentally sensitive that caution was warranted. In Category 2, the coal policy allows the coal leasing to happen, exploration can happen, but companies know up front that they won't be allowed to strip mine there. There might be the odd exception, but you have to fight for it, and you have to fight publicly and against the resistance of a policy that says you shouldn't be doing it. So that covered most of the scenic countryside along the Forestry Trunk Road. Anybody who spent any time up in the foothills and the mountains recreating has driven on Forestry Trunk Road, Highway 40, both sides. All that beautiful countryside that you drive through when you go up and down through our mountains was Category 2 for the most part. Category 3 and 4 were generally the most accessible coal deposits, things like out around Wabamun, and places like that, and in areas with the fewest environmental conflicts. But even so, Category 3 said that you can have strip mining, but you'll have to comply with pretty special constraints on it. So it enabled coal development, but it enabled coal development in the places where it would do the least harm, and it also protected the places where it would do the most harm. On May 15th last year, on a Friday night before a long weekend, right in the middle of a global pandemic, the UCP government of Kenney, Nixon, and Savage quietly announced that the coal policy would be rescinded as of June 1st. They said it was no longer needed because land use plans and rigorous environmental oversight made the policy redundant. This was untrue. The only completed land use plan for coal-bearing lands in Alberta covers the Oldman and Livingston region, and its section on coal is incomplete. And their decision opened up all of Category 2 to strip mining, which removes critical environmental protections. We have far less environmental protection for coal now than we did before the coal policy was lifted. There are several reasons why that matters. Almost all the water we rely on in Alberta for our towns and cities, our industries, irrigated agriculture, intensive livestock production, and other uses comes from the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. It doesn't just appear magically, it comes from the eastern slopes. And Alberta's economy runs not on coal, but on water. And strip mining reduces the water supply while also polluting it with toxins like selenium. It reduces the water supply by reducing groundwater discharge. You can't take all the vegetation and soil off and expect that water to percolate into the ground. It's going to run off, and it's going to run off fast. So it reduces groundwater discharge, but it also draws water from creeks for dust control and other uses. And remember, these coal mines are up where the streams are at their smallest and where they're most vulnerable, where our endangered trout live. Those are the creeks that they want to suck up water out of for their dust control and other activities on their mines. On top of that, there's no proven effective technology for keeping selenium and other salts and toxins from leaching out of crushed mine rock into streams. So less water recharge, smaller streams, more pollution. This is not a recipe for water security. So this policy decision, which was arrived at without any prior analysis, without respectful engagement of First Nations or public consultation, puts our province's water security at serious risk, especially if you play it out to full field development of all the leases that have been issued. And companies don't buy leases for nothing. At a time of rapid climate change, when our water future is already uncertain, in order to mine a substance that actually adds to those climate change risks. This is not responsible policymaking, it's insanity. In addition to the water issues, the foothills and the Front Range Mountains sustain some of this province's best fishing, hiking, hunting, camping, and outdoor adventure. Those activities actually contribute in important ways, not just to our quality of life, as we learned during this pandemic episode that we've been going through, but to our economy. And the streams that will be ruined by those mines are habitat for species at risk of extinction. The mines will ruin their habitats. Water, recreation, tourism, species at risk, all sacrificed so Australian investors can mine the world's dirtiest fuel here in Alberta. I don't know how, I think I understand why this was released on the Friday of a long weekend, because I don't know how anybody expected this to make sense to us. Understandably, people across the province, once they discovered what the UCP were up to, got upset. So much so that the UCP actually had to blink. We blanked. So they canceled the most recently issued coal leases and promised a temporary moratorium on new leases. But more than 99.5% of the area leased for coal is still leased, and it's all open for potential future strip mining. Our water supplies, and I wrote notes for this so I wouldn't run too far over time, but I obviously didn't prove them. Our water supplies and those beautiful and much loved mountain and foothill landscapes remain at exactly the same risk of being strip mined because the UCP has refused to put the coal policy back in place. It needs to be put back in place. Nothing short of that will suffice, at least until land use plans have all been completed. There's been a proper analysis of risks and trade-offs. First Nations have been respectfully and thoroughly consulted, and we've all had a chance to offer our input. So where are we today? Now that the government purportedly has blinked, we are without a coal policy or any kind of substantive protection for a huge swath of the province that Peter Lougheed's government once had the wisdom to put out of bounds for strip mining. Until that changes in a real way, we're almost certainly facing a future of big strip mines and shrunken, polluted rivers. It's Baker's belief, but there you have it.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Scott, we have a couple of municipal voices to join this evening, and then we'll get on to questions. Scott, can you introduce our two next municipal representatives?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Kevin. You know, as Shannon mentioned, we have a lot of great speakers on the panel tonight. Really quick, we'd like to remind you to share what's going on with your friends if you haven't already. Also, be sure and sign the petition on Shannon's website, www.shannonphillips.ca. And if your town or municipality is also concerned with this, let them know that you're concerned as well. So we are going to get to the question and answer section here shortly. Be sure and post your questions in the chat. We have a ton of pre-submitted questions already from concerned Albertans, and we'll try and get to as many of those as possible. But up next, we are joined with the mayor of the city of Lethbridge, Mayor Chris Spearman. Please take it away, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm very concerned about tonight's subject. I hope is my audio and video doing okay so far? Let me know if it.
Perfect, Mayor Spearman, pitch perfect.
Oh, okay. The City of Lethbridge has written a letter both to the Joint Review Panel and to the Minister of Environment and Parks. Our city depends on clean water, not just clean drinking water for our citizens, but we have more industrial food processors in the City of Lethbridge than there are in the City of Calgary. We have international corporations depending on clean water. As Mr. Van Tighem has indicated, as far as we know, if selenium enters the water in toxic levels, there is no known technology to withdraw it through water processing technology. We've expressed that concern specifically to the Minister of Environment and Parks. So allowing this to proceed will jeopardize not only the agriculture of southwestern Alberta, which is all the animals, all the irrigation that occur in the area, but also all the food processing, all the value added agriculture that takes place in the city of Lethbridge and the surrounding area. My understanding is the Grassy Mountain project specifically has an expected life of about 19 years. We've spent decades building up an economy around food processing and agriculture in and around Lethbridge and southwestern Alberta for a project that might last 19 years, might create 400 jobs in the construction phase. It's amazing that this is really being considered. Mr. Van Tighem has talked about water rights. Water rights are fought for. They're all committed already for the most part. And to have this go forward and have the headwaters potentially contaminated is a huge betrayal of trust. Politically, I'm very concerned about the process. None of our municipalities were informed. We heard about this about the same time as everybody else. It's really a betrayal of trust to process and approve the removal of the Lougheed policy late on a Friday just before a long weekend. I fully agree. I won't take up too much more time, but I think this affects the economy and the livelihood of everybody in southwestern Alberta. I think people standing around and not getting involved at this point, there's no excuse for that. I hope that we can hear more. I would invite Mr. Van Tighem to make a presentation to Lethbridge City Council, because it would be a way that he could present and others could present on this topic without interruption. It couldn't be interfered with by the government of Alberta. And it might be a useful way to inform the rest of the province about what a devastating policy this is to move forward at this stage. I'm hopeful that the joint provincial federal panel will be objective and will assess this project realistically and determine, yes, once selenium enters the water, there's no way to remove it. And there is no current plan, as far as I know, to deal with that at the moment with the Grassy Mountain project. But I fully understand, as Mr. Van Tighem has said, that there's two different issues here. And I fail to understand why the Lougheed policy had to be removed. I think it needs to be reinstated as quickly as possible. And I don't think we can count on that with this government. Those are my remarks. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mayor Chris Spearman. We really appreciate being here. And again, don't forget, if you haven't already, sign the petition at www.shannonphillips.ca/coal. Okay, we are going to turn things over to Councillor Reeve Gardner.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I so much appreciate how many people are interested tonight on this call, and I'm absolutely humbled to have Rachel Notley and Latasha and Yandra on this call. A bunch of people I already know, but put it in perspective, I started worrying about coal back, I think, in 2011 when, as a municipal councillor, as Reeve then, started hearing about open pit coal with Benga Mining. For the sake of time, I'm going to fast forward all the way to what matters, which is today. There's a whole lot of water under the bridge, but you know, in June 1st or in middle of May 2020, I felt like the municipality was thrown under the bus when the coal policy was rescinded. We ended up going from a few thousand, concerned about a few thousand acres of open pit coal mining at Grassy Mountain with Benga Mine, 7 kilometers from Blairmore, to 150,000 acres of, you know, critical wildlife habitat, West Slope cutthroat riparian streams, and incredible, beautiful country that is my home. I've been on council for going on 20, I've lost track, 22 years. And I've been running our family ranch for 35 years, roughly, something like that, raising 5th generation ranchers. And it's soon, when you've been doing this long, you soon realize the land you don't own, it simply passes through your life, and you leave it in a state that other people can enjoy, and for the kids coming along, and for the people that appreciate that landscape. So it was tearing at the very fabric of my whole world to see this happen. And I'll do whatever it takes to stop this insanity. This is, if this was a transformative, if this open coal pit mining adventure was going to transform forever Alberta's economy and rebuild the Heritage Trust Fund and lead us all into a new future, I could see possibly trading our backcountry and the health of the Oldman River Basin for that. But this is not a transformative future for us. This is the death knell of my community, the death knell of many communities, and it's putting at risk the entire leg of the economy that's represented in the south end of Alberta. In the south end of Alberta, we got 70% of Canada's irrigation. The Oldman River Basin feeds 40% of that irrigation. I don't think that the food companies that Mr. Spearman speaks of, the mayor of Lethbridge, I don't think the food companies will see an added benefit selling French fries with a label on the package that says with added selenium or chromium or borium or arsenic. I find this absolutely insane, and I'm being behind the scenes and seeing the destruction that's happening currently in the last 2 years, and will happen in 2021 with the coal exploration that's happening in my community already. There's thousands and thousands of acres of destroyed territory in critical wildlife habitat with the coal exploration programs. The coal exploration programs that were given same-day approvals, so-called rigorous environmental regulation from the AER, with no chance for public comment. on several numerous exploration programs, speaks to the destruction that's happening already. The MD of ranchland, probably the exploration roads that are linked to the coal exploration in the backcountry is probably surpassed 50% of the municipality's former road network. We have ridges with 500 well pads, with some of those well pads would have 5 to 6 drill holes on them. And this is in mountainous terrain, so it's not like it's easy to build a road there. I think I'm at 6 minutes already, which I can't believe, because this is like describing an iceberg by the tip of it. But just this destruction that we're witnessing is unprecedented in the MD of Ranchland's history. It spells the end of fresh water in the Oldman River Basin if it's allowed to go ahead. You can have fresh water or you can have open pit coal mining, but you're not going to be able to have both. And I'm afraid of what the future looks like if this government is allowed to continue the way it is. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Reeve Cam Gardner. He's the Reeve of the MD of Ranchlands, which is a lot of territory.
Former Reeve.
Oh, or the former Reeve. Okay, you're counselor now. So Cam is very active in municipal politics and has been for some time. And the MD of Ranchlands is the whole, a large amount of foothills. And west of the 22 and west of Chain Lakes is where the Gardner family has ranched for many generations. And Cam has been a leader in his community on standing up for water, for nature, and certainly for the right to keep ranching in that area and not have to have that economic activity displaced by a succession of strip mines all up the foothills. Now, we've heard a lot about water tonight. And so I'm going to move into the questions now. And we've had a lot of questions submitted to us in the last few days and this evening. I'm going to read a couple of them, and then I'm going to ask if a couple of water folks on the line with us here tonight. Cheryl Bradley, who's been working with the Livingston landowners and others for many, many years, advocating for water in Southern Alberta, and in a number of different environmental groups. And Nigel Banks has joined us this evening. He's from the University of Calgary. He's a professor of law there. And so I'm just going to read some of these and ask Nigel and Cheryl to react to some of these comments. So, for example, our family farm resides in the river bottom near Monarch alongside the Oldman River. I'm gravely concerned with what potential negative outcomes may reach us. Water is the lifeblood of all producers, farmers, and ranchers alike. Having a fresh, clean, reliable source of water is how we survive. And what impacts will all this have in regards to contamination of our main water source? As well, how would you personally hold UCP and Jason Kenney responsible for this action that, in my opinion, was poorly consulted, if at all, and cloaked behind a pandemic with inadequate communication directly affecting constituents in our area? So, I'll speak to the political pieces before turning it over to our experts here on the call tonight. I think how we hold them accountable is by supporting our municipal leaders that are speaking out. We've got the MD of Ranchlands on the call tonight, and Mayor Spearman from the city of Lethbridge, but there have been many others that are now speaking out against these projects. The town of Nanton, town of High River, that we've heard from, and I think there are many more to come. So that's the first thing. We should speak up when we see that our representatives are doing things that we don't like, but equally too, we should support them when they are doing things that we like and be active citizens in that way. The second thing is, of course, sign all of the petitions and definitely write your letters to the various levels of government. So CPAWS has a really good letter writing tool that I linked to from my website. Please make sure you send your letters. I know from folks in the federal government that they're getting an earful on this issue, and I know the provincial government is too, and we all know that because they tried to pull the wool over our eyes on Monday and tell us that they made some substantive changes, which they absolutely did not, and we've heard that from other speakers. So keep that pressure up, and make sure you keep moving that pressure into some of those unexpected places too. Any of your community associations or agricultural ag societies or other ag services groups. Make sure that you are using your tools as a citizen in a democracy, and all those tools of civil society to make sure you're heard. And now I'll turn over some of those questions around water. We have a number of them from folks. We have questions about the West Slope cutthroat trout. We have questions about certainly ruining the tourism industry. Folks are worried about making outsiders rich and giving away large quantities of water. And I'm wondering if Cheryl and Nigel can talk a little bit about what the changes are to water policy as a result of this coal policy, and why those are so worrisome to people, in addition to the addition of selenium and other pollutants in the water supply. Go ahead.
This is Cheryl. Nigel, oh, you're on. You go ahead, Nigel. Do you have comments you'd like to make first?
Put your cameras on if you can, because we're broadcasting to YouTube. If your internet connection will allow it, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'll start and then hand it over to Shannon. I mean, I think that the main part of the question is sort of what can we do and what's going on already. I guess in relation to the Grassy Mountain project, as Kevin said, the opportunities for public comment on that at this stage are closed. But in relation to the change in the coal policy, there are two cases, that are two lines of cases that are before the courts, questioning the ability of the government of Alberta to unilaterally revoke the coal policy. Some of those are brought by First Nations, and some of them are brought by ranchers and municipalities, and organizations like CPAWS are intervening in those cases. So I guess, I mean, there's reason for hope there, that the court will come down and say, you know, this was way too closely connected with the whole process of the South Saskatchewan plan. It shouldn't be allowed to be revoked. And perhaps more importantly, in relation to First Nations, there's clearly a constitutional duty to consult when we're making important policy decisions. There was no consultation, and therefore I think there's good reason to think that the First Nations might succeed. And as Deandra said earlier, protecting treaty rights protects us all. These aren't, I mean, these are treaties that are of concern not just to the Indigenous nation signatories, but to all of us living in this part of the province.
Thank you, Nigel. And Cheryl, I just want to read in another question from a woman. Her name is Jean Bota from Red Deer. She said she chaired the Red Deer River watershed for 3 years. She's very concerned about the danger from coal runoff into the watershed. And you know, obviously specifically the Old Man, but with the rescission of the coal policy, it's a number of different watersheds. So Cheryl, I'm wondering if you can speak to that. And also she has asked about some of the allocation or changes to some of the water licenses. And if you could talk a little bit in the Southern Alberta context about that as well, those two things.
Okay, well, I think I distinguish our headwaters and the impacts that would happen in our headwaters from coal mines. I distinguish that from what would be the effects lower down in our basin. In our headwater streams, as we all know, if we've hiked or recreated up in the mountains, we've got quite small tributary streams there. And they really cannot tolerate extraction of much water, if any water. So especially in the winter time, water flows are very low. We have big runoffs in the spring, but by the time winter comes, we have very little water in those rivers. So coal companies extract water operations could have major impacts on the health of those streams because of what they're extracting. That kind of change in quantity of flow is not so obvious lower down in our basin, but there is a real concern of the pollution that would get into the tributary streams. It would be bioaccumulate, like selenium concentrates up the food chain, and it would pollute further down the rivers, and it could last for a very, very long time, like more than a human lifetime. So the person who asked about what they should be concerned around monarch, I would say you may not see a change right away, but I would be very concerned about next generations and the quality of the water they have flowing by there where they live. With respect to allocations, Nigel, do you want to speak to the allocation question?
That would be really great, because it's complicated, but I feel like is really, really important to the economy down here in Southern Alberta. So if maybe we could just do a bit of an explanation, because you two both wrote a fantastic piece in the Alberta Law blog, which folks will put in the link in the YouTube channel for people to go and read it. It really was helpful to me anyway, to break it down. Even though I do know a thing or two about the Water Act, it was still helpful to read your breakdown of it. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, Nigel.
So sure, I can start with that and Cheryl can jump in. And so I'd say if we think about the South Saskatchewan Basin generally, the general proposition, apart from the Red Deer sub-basin, is that the entire basin is closed to new allocations. In other words, if I want water, I've got to acquire it from an existing licensee through a water trade, which would have to be approved by the department. There is one exception to that, and that relates to the headwaters of the Oldman, where there is an allocation order in place allowing for licenses to be acquired in relation to, I think it's 11,000 acre foot of water. In other words, it is possible to acquire water in the upper part of the basin up to a maximum of 11,000 acre foot. But most of that, under the order as it's written at the moment, is for non-industrial purposes. There's a very small allocation, I think several hundred acre foot of water is all, that could be authorized for industrial purposes. However, the department is proposing, and there has been some limited consultation on this, basically to open that up so that that entire amount could be authorized for industrial purposes. And presumably, the rationale for that is to allow coal companies to acquire a water entitlement, not just from the existing market, but as part of that reservation of 11,000 acre foot. And the serious risk, of course, there is not just that we're undoing something, but it's also, we have simply not done the studies to ascertain whether that estimate of 11,000 acre foot being available is consistent with protecting critical habitat for endangered species of trout, bull trout, and West Slope Cutthroat. Over to you, Cheryl.
Yes, and I guess just further to that, Nigel, there is a process by which you can determine how much water you need to have flowing in your stream or your big river for it to be healthy. And we have not determined what those levels of flow need to be in our headwater streams for them to be healthy. So it's premature to consider allocating large amounts of water to that could contaminate them, but also that could withdraw enough water to really jeopardize the health of those headwater tributaries. So we have a lot more work to do yet to understand if we can take any water out of them, of those tributaries, and still maintain healthy trout populations and clean water and healthy ecosystems generally.
And just to add on to that, because it is really the biggest question for so much of the public, is the effect on water. I want to add Kevin Van Tighem, who actually wrote an entire big book called Heartwaters about our headwaters. I have it around here somewhere, but Kevin, do you have something you'd like to add? And then I'm going to ask a question to Deandra and Latasha.
I just wanted to point out that allocation, that water allocation that was held back, was from the controversy over the Old Man River Dam. And it was basically the way that the government of the day committed that there would be water available for the ambitions of the upstream communities. So if you want to expand irrigation, you want to expand your community, and you need more water for it, and to a limited extent, if you want to expand industry. So with this move to shift that allocation and make it available to the coal mining, what they're basically telling municipalities, other industries, anybody that wants to expand the irrigation operations in the upper basin of the Old Man, forget it. You're not the future anymore. There's no water for you. It's for coal. So I think that's worth keeping in mind, that this is a taking from the people that actually hold the future of our economy in their hands in order to give it to Australia.
Yeah, and as Cam Gardner has pointed out, the company, the proponent for Grassy Mountain, has applied for the entire amount of the industrial allocation. I'm going to move things on to a different topic, but of course related, because everything in the environment is, everything in the economy is. We've got a question here from a member of Piikani Nation. She says, I'm a member of the Piikani Nation and I am part of spiritual societies. My position is based on the traditional teaching I received over time. It is my duty to speak up and protect our people to continue our existence. Our nation is part of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and we reside directly east of the proposed mine pit. The Old Man River flows directly through our nation. If the provincial government goes through with the open pit mining, our spiritual, cultural ways of knowing are at risk. I'm wondering, Deandra and Latasha, if you might, we've had some other comments too about these are treaty lands. What was the engagement with Piikani before the coal policy was rescinded with Piikani and Kainai? Sorry, I'm not asking you about to speak for Piikani. I'm just asking you to speak to what the engagement was with the Kainai Nation. And some other thoughts on what our writer here from Piikani Nation says about the impact on traditional ways of life.
Hi, thank you for sending in your
Sure,
comment.
thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon, and thank you for sending in your comment. I can talk a little bit about the engagement and consultation and lack of consultation that has taken place in many different places. When we talk about the Banga mine, it is a lot different than the coal policy. And interestingly enough, when we speak about consultation, it's a really complex issue. You know, I 100% agree that these projects will have lasting impacts on our cultural ceremonies, societies, and ways of life. It's not just a mine, and the snowball effect will cause cultural chaos within our societies. And so where we can look at consultation in regards to the Banga mine, unfortunately, those ones were endorsed by various chief and councils throughout the Treaty 7 area. And I stand with you that no community level consultation was conducted related to these projects prior to that endorsement. As a member of the Blood Tribe, I share that frustration because of that feeling of silence, that silentness that is going on there. In regards to the 1976 coal policy, the Blood Tribe and Siksika Nation have actually filed a joint application for a judicial review against the UCP government regarding lack of consultation. So interestingly enough, they're asking for consultation, and as members, we are also asking for meaningful consultation so that all of our voices can be heard and recognized, because it is not, the land cannot be owned by just one person. Our treaty rights, our Aboriginal title to land, everything like that, they are communal in nature. And from our Nitsitabi ways of life, we do believe in that. We are all stewards of the land. We are not owners of the land. And therefore, all of our voices are important in this. And so in terms of consultation, you know, this is where Nitsitabi water protectors come in to help to amplify that voice of the people, and recognizing that our voices are important, and helping to hold our own leadership accountable, and opening up and developing those consultation processes in our communities that allow for that community voice to be at the forefront. Yeah, that's all I've got to say.
Thanks, Natasha. And I just kind of want to speak to kind of what Nigel brought up earlier, and it was actually Natasha who mentioned that the treaties, and you know, one of the first paragraphs in there talks about how the treaties is meant for peace for all parties, and yet we continue to fight and to argue amongst ourselves for this land that, you know, as Cam mentioned, no one owns it. It passes through our generations for the next people, for our next ones to sustain themselves. The important thing about ceremonies with us, and Sheena, I thank you for your comment. Thank you for standing up as a Blackfoot woman. Our ceremonies were our blueprints for how we interacted with the land. Our land uses were ceremony. It was a very reciprocal and grateful relationship between Blackfoot people and the land. A lot of the conversation that we continue to hear is around economy. Yes, I think definitely polluting our water is really going to affect the economy that we rely on today. The economy of Blackfoot people, however, was our ceremonies. Our ceremonies, you know, was very interactive with our economy. Our ceremonies provided our teachings and our lessons on the best way to treat the land that would continue to sustain us for time immemorial. And how can we expect to continue to share and teach these lessons to people, to the next generations who will be eating and drinking in selenium? I think that's a really serious question there.
Thank you, Deandra. And, you know, the point that you're making about future generations and young people now, speaking up has been made several times by folks who have written us in. I don't want any coal mining operations in Alberta. For example, one woman writes, as a young person who owns a business here, I want to see Alberta become a leader in clean energy. We hear from another woman who's a teenager in Lethbridge, Zedona, who writes, I'm a teen living in Lethbridge. I, along with many others, worry about the lasting impacts this mine will have on my future. Primarily, I'm concerned about the effects on our drinking water supply, which of course, Mayor Spearman shares her concerns, and we're lucky to have a mayor of this city who is looking out for Zedona's future and that of our kids. I want to ask a question of Cam Gardner here, because we've got some folks that have written to us from, like I said, Monarch, but we've also got some folks here from Nanton, from all along from Fort McLeod and so on. And I'll just read one person. Let's see if I can find him from Nanton. And if I can't find him, then oh, there he is. So Lance from Nanton writes, I'm a bit unclear on the distinction between grassy and the ones ones further north. I think we talked about that quite a bit. So Grassy Mountain is a current project, and the coal policy rescinded means that other projects all up the foothills can go forward. I'm under the impression that Grassy Mountain is a done deal, too far along to be stopped, question mark. I don't know about that, Lance. I think there's still opportunity to speak to our federal representatives, and I know Heather McPherson, who's an NDP MP for Edmonton Strathcona, is on the line tonight, and we'll certainly be making sure that the federal government knows exactly how many Albertans are worried about this project and worried about the downstream effects, in particular the water allocation issues we heard about. And then, like Lance goes on to write, I've seen the posts from our MLA, Roger Reid and Jason Nixon, the video from the legislature in July where Reid throws softballs to Nixon. Yeah, they do that. It sounded like condescension, simplification, and, well, Lance writes something else, but BS. I wish someone would make a video fact-checking the exchange point by point. So we're hearing from folks out in rural Alberta, and I know Cam Gardner, who is on the council for the MD of Ranchlands, hears from a lot of folks out in rural Alberta too. Cam, can you just give a little bit of an overview of a couple of minutes of what you're actually hearing from people that are maybe unexpected?
Well, I mean, there's a big awareness piece. Like starting in 2011, it was like me shouting in the wilderness, screaming from the hills, the flood's coming, and which was pretty much what happened in the last big flood. We were screaming from the hills, yelling at High River and downstream that the waters were rising and you're in trouble. Now, Lance mentioned Benga mining and separating that from the other the other 5 potential proposed mines that are in the local area. And the way I look at it is Benga mining, we haven't had mining in the MD of Ranchland for about 6 to 7 decades. So Benga mining to me presents the open door to the rest of the coal mines. And once the loadout, once the investment's been done in doing the EIA, going through the regulatory program, building the railway, the loadout, the processing plant, then those companies have a foothold and will be able to march north. And we're not talking about 20 years here and there, in my opinion. You're talking about a multi-generational march north and west, all the way up west in Anton, all the way to flat top Plateau Mountain country. So this coal proposal, although we talk about Benga mining be a few thousand acres, we're talking about coal lands that march all the way from the north end of the Castle Park all the way to Kananaskis country. It's 150,000 acres of, I mean, fairly pristine country. I mean, there's been some developments and some unreclaimed trails. I think part of it, I guess, what bothers me, we have in the province, there's a 2018 study done by the energy regulator itself that mentions $31 billion liability carried by the province related to unreclaimed mining enterprises that already exist in the province. And it's only backstopped by 1.8 billion so that's 31 billion, sorry, backstopped by about 1.8 billion in security. It reminds me of the orphan wells we have in the province and the lack of the ability of the regulator to hold these companies to account. So when I talk about pristine country in the back country of MD of Ranchland, it's a hard thing to ask people to trust a regulator that continuously leaves and historically has left an incredible path of destruction that companies haven't been held to account to clean up in the past. So we even have companies walking away from their oil assets and leaving their taxes unpaid in communities all across Alberta currently. Those companies don't have the resources any longer to clean up after themselves, and that's left to the Alberta government to take care of, and it falls on taxpayers. So we're getting stuck in this trap again. One of the coal mines that's currently proposing to open closed in the 80s. The government let the company off from reclaiming the land because they were going to go bankrupt. So to avoid bankrupting the company, they let them leave with an unreclaimed mine. And there's a selenium lake on that mountain. And here we are being asked to trust the next company that comes along. And in fact, the companies that have been operating in the MD of Ranchland so far, most of them have never mined an ounce of coal. They're developers. They come in, they develop the area, and then they leave after they sell the company to somebody that actually does coal mining. So these people are, these companies, sorry, are simply exactly like the developers you would see operating in your communities. They come in, they develop a piece of land, they sell the houses, and they're gone. And that's what we have going on in 150,000 acres that this government is pushing for. And it's not transformative. It's relying on the economy, a hypothetical picture that we get 400 jobs roughly, or a couple hundred jobs per mine. There's a ripple effect of having 2 or 3 jobs spin off of each of those jobs. But frankly, each one of these mines employs less than one small slaughter plant that would be in, say, Lethbridge. So it's a bad trade. Thank you. I'm on my soapbox.
Well, thank you, Cam. You don't need a soapbox. You can sit in your living room these days. And that's the, I guess, some of the upside of the pandemic. So folks, we have a few more questions. So we sort of said we would stay till 8 o'clock, but there's still lots of people watching and lots of questions. So we are going to go a little while longer. There have been a lot of people who have written in on my Facebook page and elsewhere, both on the value of diversifying the economy, but also, you know, people are worried about jobs and economic development in Southern Alberta. And everyone who's ever tried to develop anything, whether it's a subdivision or bring a new investment into Southern Alberta, the first question is, okay, so where are you going to get your water? So I'm wondering if Mayor Spearman, who, you know, in his time in the mayor's chair has really put an emphasis on economic development, can talk about the economic argument that the UCP makes, that the coal companies make. You know, our friend there, the Australian billionaire, who's going to make a whole bunch of money off this, while we get almost nothing in terms of royalties. But can Mayor Spearman, can you talk a little bit about how foundational that access to water is for any company trying to make an investment and promote employment here in Lethbridge?
I can. And what I would say is, if this coal mine goes ahead, it will frustrate our future opportunities for economic development in agriculture. We have said that our priority is to become an agricultural hub. But if there's any risk of contamination to the water, and every food processor requires clean water, the opportunity for value-added food processing in the city of Lethbridge or anywhere else along the Oldman River. So what we want to do is add to primary agriculture. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in irrigation in order to promote agriculture. The best way we can build on growing crops in this area and raising livestock in this area is to process finished goods in this area. If the water's contaminated, it destroys our future. We have currently 9 potential businesses wanting to invest in Southwestern Alberta and Lethbridge, international companies. If this project goes ahead, I can see those all drying up. If we can't guarantee the quality of our water, no one will invest in this in this community in the future. And we risk the opportunity, we actually risk losing the businesses that have invested here already. International companies like Richardson's, like Cavendish, the Black Velvet Distilling Company. We have over 20 world-class food processing companies in the city of Lethbridge. If the water's contaminated, we lose it all. We lose all those jobs. And I would say that's too big a risk to take. And I think this government should think twice. Not that they ever have done before, but they should think twice before allowing something which has no proven technology for removing selenium from the water and creates great risk to every aspect of our business and our lifestyle in this area.
Well, I don't know if it could be much more clear than that. Thank you, Mayor Spearman, for that. I want to get to maybe one more question. Scott, you I had seen a great comment that had come in when people signed up for this town hall. I'm wondering if you can read that.
Yeah, definitely, Shannon. So this comment is from Gordon, who lives close to Raymond. And he just says, no question. Just wanted to share how continually embarrassed, enraged, and dismayed I have felt and continue to feel on almost a daily basis, seeing the policies and decisions of the UCP government. This is but the latest example of that, but one that concerns me greatly as a long-term resident of Lethbridge, now living near Raymond. And he goes on to say, I do not know what I can do to stop this project from going forward, but I hope you will share that with us on how we can help. The short-sighted way this government continues to sell our own interests from underneath us to benefit foreign corporations is an absolute disgrace. Shannon, that's pretty strong.
Yeah, that's some pretty strong stuff. Thanks for that, Scott. And for those of you who are just joining us, that is Scott McGregor. He's been emceeing our event this evening, and we're coming up to the close. We're going to take a couple more questions. Scott is known to many people here to local folks here in Lethbridge, and he's done a great job of keeping us on time and keeping us focused. Thanks a lot for joining us here this evening, Scott. And of course, we were joined at the outset by NDP leader Rachel Notley, who also discussed the risks to investment, which is something that Mayor Chris Spearman has talked a lot about, and indeed to our current jobs and way of life. That's something that Cam Gardner from the MD of Ranchlands has talked a lot about. His family has ranched here in southern Alberta. He's west of Chain Lakes in some very beautiful country, and absolutely has the risk of open pit coal mines on his doorstep, affecting his way of life and his livelihood. We were joined at the beginning by Deandra Brewsted and Latasha Kaffrobe, two Kainai women from here in southern Alberta, who provided their perspective on these coal mines and some reaction to some other folks who wrote in about treaty rights and consultation and traditional way of life. I'm going to move to one final question, then I think we'll wrap up. We actually had quite a few people write in from the Red Deer area, from the Edmonton and Red Deer area, and they were curious about the effect of the rescission of the coal policy in the Bighorn area, which is an area that it's no secret that I believe needs higher levels of protection, just as I believe very strongly we needed those in the Castle region as well. And that's why when I was Environment Minister, we made it happen. But I want to read a couple of the comments from people because they're really quite powerful. And let me just find one or two here from people. I grew up in campsites along the David Thompson Highway. As a woman writing to us, I've been going to the Gold-Eye Lake for summer camping since I was a toddler. I'm now a 34-year-old woman with her own baby. I want to take my daughter to these places. I want her to grow up the same way, learning to ride her bike in the safety of a campsite on Gold-Eye Lake. I've certainly been there too, Sarah, and you've really evoked that sense of place for me. Here's what she writes. I want to recreate the photo of my dad holding me in the rocks above Crescent Falls with my husband and daughter. Some things are sacred. I'm so upset I could vomit. This cannot be allowed to happen. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on when the UCP took away the coal policy. We talked about it earlier in the evening, but I want people to be clear about where that means that strip mining can now occur. And Kevin Van Teekum's done a lot of writing about conservation here in Alberta, and I'm wondering if he can provide an answer to that question.
Yeah, the coal policy applied to all the coal-bearing lands in Alberta, so that was pretty much from the 49th parallel right up past Grand Cache. And since the coal policy was lifted, I'm sorry to, I think that correspondent that you mentioned there probably already knows this, but if not, I'm sorry to tell her that all of the land around Crescent Falls was leased by the UCP government for potential future strip mining. All the land around the Nordegg community, the same thing. There's a huge coal strip mine proposal for the canyon of the Ram River, which is one of the great blue ribbon trout streams of Alberta. So this is not just something that's happening in the Oldman. Most of the upper Oldman is now leased, but this problem extends all the way up to Grand Cache. It opened up an awful lot of country that we've always just taken for granted. Potentially, until the coal policy is reinstated or something stronger is put in place, we could be strip mining. We could be seeing strip mining in all of those places. Remember, as happy children growing up in the foothills.
So if you want to sign the petition to urge the government to restore the coal policy, you'll recall that the UCP did make an announcement on Monday that they took away some of the leases. It was about 0.1% of what's actually been leased. And as Kevin just explained to us, it is a quite large swaths of land. So you do want to go and sign that petition, send your letters using that CPAWS letter writing tool that I've linked on my website. And there will be more to come on this in terms of restoring the coal policy. But those are the things that you can do now. And a number of us here in Southern Alberta live in municipalities where municipalities are starting to speak out against the UCP government's decision to take away the coal policy and allow strip mining in the mountains. So those folks too, like I said before, we should be supporting them and making sure that our rural municipal councillors, our city and towns, our representatives here, hear from us that we support them so they have the courage of their convictions to stand up against the UCP, which can be a really tough thing to do, especially in some of these communities. And I know that people feel, a little bit intimidated sometimes. And believe me, elected officials sometimes feel that way too. And so if you do support them and you see that your municipality spoke out, I see the town of Nanton did some things a couple of days ago, for example, write to them and tell them that they're doing the right thing. They need to hear from you as well. So on that, folks, it's 8:30, and we said that we were going to end at about this time. So I suppose we should stick to the timeline. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Again, go to shannonphillips.ca/coal where you can sign that petition and sign up for my newsletter too, because as we support other community efforts, you're going to want to know what those are. The Niitsitapi Water Protectors, I want you to go and follow their website, Facebook page rather, their Facebook presence. They've got great stuff happening there and a postcard campaign as well. Might as well pitch in on that. I also go and have a look at what the Livingston landowners are doing on, they have a Facebook presence as well. And there is a legal fund to donate to as well for the various legal actions, including that judicial review that a number of First Nations and landowners, CAM's neighbors, in fact, are undertaking to challenge the rescinding of the coal policy. Now, the final thing is the NDP has a number of different proposals for economic diversification. There are other ways to put people to work and to grow prosperity in our communities throughout Southern Alberta and through all of Alberta without open pit mining and strip mining of our mountains. And so we have renewables potential. We have agricultural potential. potential. We have clean tech and other potential. But I mean, the biggest one down here that depends on water is value-added food processing from agriculture. You know, we cannot attract those kinds of jobs without water. And so we need a thoughtful plan for diversification to do that. And that's why the Alberta NDP opposition through the legislature has a website called albertasfuture.ca. That we have a number of proposals on there, and there's more to come. We're also doing a number of different online engagements there. So folks, thank you very much for taking the time. And I hope to connect with you again. And I hope you are able to connect with some of the groups that are standing up and fighting for our values. You know, we are defined by our common loves, and we all love to drink water, but we also love that connection to nature, no matter where we come from. And that's really worth fighting for. Thank you, everyone.